Hi guys, it's me, Mrs. Main, back with the second half of Act 4. So when we last left our heroes, the English were greatly outnumbered, but Henry V pulled it together and he gave this terrific speech, the St. Crispin's Day speech. We're going to talk about it later. And everybody got really riled up. The English were feeling really good about this fight, even though, again, greatly outnumbered. And then they charged onto the field. The only battle scenes we've seen so far is in scene 4, Pistol on the battlefield captures a French noble, and Pistol doesn't speak any French, and the French noble doesn't speak any English, and it's wacky and silly and crazy. So we get a little bit of comic relief before we dive into the actual battle. So we're going to start with Act 4, Scene 5, which we see the French camp, and the French commanders are talking among themselves. They're very shocked that they are losing. It's really hard to show a battle on the stage. So this is the way Shakespeare does it. The French commanders are talking. They're like, we're losing. What do we do? They talk a little bit about maybe committing suicide, but unlike Cassius and Brutus, like we saw in Julius Caesar, committing suicide on the battlefield in France or England in the 15th century, where this play is set, is not an acceptable option. It's a culturally acceptable option in ancient Rome, but it's not a serious option here. The way they talk about it here is very different, because basically they're just being overly dramatic babies. Falling on your sword is not a thing that English and French fighters do. So really, they're just looking for attention. They decide amongst themselves they really have two options. They can surrender like great big cowards, or they can fight to the death. So they decide to charge back into the battle even though they're losing. It's very dramatic. It gives you a nice sense of what it might feel like to be in a battle. And again, like I said, it's really hard to do on stage. So I have a quick clip for you from some actors who I think have done this really well. It is a battle scene, so just like brace yourself because it's going to be a little violent, but watch this real quick. I got you. That is actually Bugs Bunny, but I've been watching a lot of cartoons this week and I've been getting super bored, so. Okay, so in scene 6, we find ourselves on the battlefield. The field of Agincourt, it's called. This is the Battle of Agincourt that they're fighting. Henry V is standing on the battlefield and he gets a report of how the battle is going from Exeter. This is a really good way to help the audience imagine what's happening on the battlefield. So Exeter says that the English have mostly won, but the French are still fighting in places. And he tells Henry V a sad and serious story about two nobles who've been fighting with Henry V who've died on the battlefield. Suffolk and York, they're cousins. Although really the way nobility works at the time, Henry V is related to a large portion of his nobles. So it's a touching story, it's beautifully told. And then right at the end of the scene, there's an outcry. The French seem to be like rallying or attacking, and Henry orders all of the French prisoners to be killed. Okay. Scene 7 starts off really dark. Remember when the French decided that they were going to keep fighting rather than just give up? Well, some of them have got past the English lines or around the English lines, and they're running through the English camp. There aren't any soldiers in the English camp. They're only servants and pages, which are young boys who are training to be knights, but they're not knights yet. They're like 10 years old. And the retreating French loot the camp. They take all the good stuff and they kill all the pages. The French are well and truly beat though, and King Henry comes on to the scene. He's really mad when he hears about the pages. He yells at the Duke of Bourbon, who is a French noble prisoner. When they say kill the French prisoners, they wouldn't kill the nobles. They mean the ordinary prisoners. There are different rules for nobles. It's not a very American concept, but, well, they're English. Anyway, Henry gets the French messenger comes, and the French messenger asks Henry, he says, the King of France would like permission to walk onto the battlefield and like retrieve the dead. And Henry makes Montjoy say really clearly who won. Henry's like, oh yeah, sure, but first, who won this battle? Who won? What? And Montjoy's like, the English won. And Henry's like, I can't hear. It's a little bit childish, but again, to be fair, Henry is still a child. He's like a teenager. And then we lighten the mood a little bit. This is Shakespeare not wanting to get us too down. Hey, sweetheart. It's the dog. Oh, she hit her head. Shakespeare not wanting us to get too down. He's not wanting to bring the mood down too much, but also in this play, Henry V has learned a lot about leading men and being a leader. And part of being a leader is knowing when to sort of change the mood. And the mood's really dark right now. The English have won, but there's a lot of dead. They're really angry. He's going to lighten the mood a little. So this is Henry, but this is Shakespeare as well. Anyway, he takes that glove. Remember that glove he got when he was pretending to be a normal soldier? He traded gloves with a guy named Williams. Michael Williams, I think was his name. He traded gloves, and they'd agreed if they both survived the battle that they'd fight. And the way they'd know each other is they'd have the glove. This is going to lead to a hilarious, wacky misunderstanding and someone getting sucker punched. So Henry's like, hey, come here, Fluellen, Captain Fluellen. I have a special super secret mission for you. I took this glove off of a French nobleman in the battle, and I would like you to wear it openly in camp. And if anyone sees that glove and challenges you, we know that it is definitely a French spy and traitor. And so Flowen's like, I won't let you down, sir. And Henry V is like, Okay, guys. In scene 8, Fluellen, with his new glove, is minding his own business when Michael Williams, hey, sweetheart, when Michael Williams sees him wearing the glove, and he walks up to him and just, like, sucker punches him. And Captain Fluellen's like, aha, I've found the traitor. And so he orders Michael Williams to be arrested. And then King Henry comes on the scene, and he's like, what is this? What's going on? That was me acting, by the way. Hollywood, call me. Anyway, Henry knows full well what's going on because he set it up, but he pretends like he doesn't, and Flowen's like, this dude hit me, here's your traitor. And Michael Williams is like, no, let me explain. There's this dude, it was a campfire, we exchanged gloves, there was a thing. And so King Henry is like, really? The person you exchanged gloves with was me. Ha ha! You're king. And instead of freaking out, Michael Williams is like, wait a minute. I didn't know you were the king because you disguised yourself. If I'd known I was talking to my king, I wouldn't have been such a jerk. And Henry's in a really good mood because his trick worked really well. And also he just won a huge battle. So he was like, that's fair. I'm gonna reward you for, I don't know what he's being rewarded for being honest, maybe? And so he takes those 2 gloves that Williams has and he fills them with gold coins. So that's kind of neat for Michael Williams. What does Captain Fluellen get, you ask? Oh, he gets a sore jaw from getting punched in the face. So life's not fair. Anyway, at the very end of the scene, the Exeter comes with tallies, and there are more than 10,000 dead French from the battle, but miraculously the English only lost 29 or 30 soldiers. So Henry's like, yeah, I super won, that's great to hear. Now let's proceed onwards through France, but no bragging, guys, no bragging. And that's the end of the scene. Hey guys, so we're all done with Act 4, but I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about this week's assignment and specifically to get into the St. Crispin's Day speech. So there are two major speeches in Act 4 and they do very different things. Last week we focused on the major speech from Scene 2, the Upon the King speech, and by the way, I got some really terrific memes out of that one. You guys did a good job there. This week we're going to focus on the St. Crispin's Day speech, which happens in Scene 3, but we're going to talk about this week. So your assignment this week is to take the text of the St. Crispin's Day speech and translate it from Shakespearean English into modern English with emojis. Heavy on the emojis, please. I want lots of emojis. So I thought we'd take a minute and just break down the speech. It's a really long speech, so I'm not going to break down the whole thing, but I'm going to sort of give you an overview. So if you'll recall, in Scene 3, it's the day of the Battle of Agincourt. Henry is standing with his English soldiers. They can physically see the French, and there are a lot more French, like a lot more French. So the English soldiers are looking at this, and they're not feeling too good. Westmoreland says, oh, if only we had more men. Like, there are tons of men back in England. Why didn't we think to bring more men? And Henry, this is the beginning of his speech. He says, no, we don't want any more men. I would not have a single nother person than we have right now, because the more men we have, the more glory we're going to have to share. It makes for a way better story if we're outnumbered, if we're the underdogs and then we beat them. And we're going to beat them, by the way. He says, and if to live the fewer men, the greater share of honor, God's will, I pray thee, wish not one man more. Then what Henry does in this speech is he says, anybody who's afraid to fight, anybody who's chicken, anybody who's feeling like we're not going to win can just leave now. Go now. I will give you money and you can buy buy like passage on a ship home. Go back to England. We don't want that sort of negativity around us. We don't want anybody fighting beside us who doesn't believe in their hearts that we're going to win, that the English are right, that God's on our side, that we're definitely going to win. He's projecting a lot of confidence, and I've never led men into battle, but I feel like that's something that you should definitely do. You should project confidence. The next thing he does in this speech is he paints a picture for them of how future generations are going to see this day in history. Let me read you some of that. He says, he that outlives this day and comes home safe will stand a tiptoe when this day is named and rouse him at the name of Crispin. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbors and say, tomorrow is St. Crispin. Then he will strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, these wounds I had on St. Crispin's Day. He's saying, years from now, if you live and go home safe and nothing else terrible happens and you end up an old man, every day on the Feast of St. Crispin's Day, every year on the Feast of St. Crispin's Day, people are going to celebrate, and you'll pull up your sleeve and be like, look at all my scars because I was there at St. Crispin's Day, and people are just going to lose their minds. You'll be like a really cool war hero. That's the second part of the speech. The third part of the speech, the rousing finale, is what I'm asking you to translate. So it goes like this. The story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispin shall ne'er go by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered, we few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle his condition. And gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed that they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, whiles any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's Day. So have fun translating that, and I'll see you next week with the end of this epic journey that is Henry V.